advertising is the single most insidious and widespread tool that is used to manipulate consumers. It tells women that in order to be beautiful, they must purchase the latest makeup products. It tells men that in order to be a true man, they must finish the night off with a beer. And most damagingly, it tells everyone in society that they must spend money in order to be happy. We stop this exploitation at its root by removing this sort of advertising from the public. What do we support then on our side of the house? The banning of any additional advertising over and above descriptions of the product's basic technical details. Text must be in a consistent size and font in black colour with an accurate image of the product on a white backdrop. We support the continued use of advertising on TV, internet and billboards insofar as it meets these criteria, and we'd allow simple company names but no logos. Any breaches would be regulated by the government and fined. Our burden in today's debate is as follows: that the current advertising is actively coercive and damaging to consumers, and that by removing non-technical advertising, we benefit consumers. I bring 4 arguments to the House to prove that today. Firstly, why current advertising is coercive and damaging in nature. Secondly, how we improve consumer choice and decision making. Thirdly, how we break down harmful and majoritarian stereotypes perpetrated through advertising. And then an argument from Nick about how we increase innovation and product differentiation. But firstly, the principled framework under which this debate takes place is that the government has a duty to regulate producers in the name of public good. We will win this debate if we can prove that this policy protects consumers. First argument then, why current advertising is coercive and damaging in nature. Because let's look at who currently makes all the decisions around advertising. It's people high up in companies who are distant from the reality of consumers. They are profit-driven and they only care about consumers insofar as they actually buy their products and are useful to them. What does this mean? It means that they're likely to use advertising techniques that exploit these consumers in order to make that profit. How does this manifest itself in the status quo? In 3 ways. One, that it relies on creating a false need. Because often these companies are selling products that are superfluous, that aren't necessary to basic day-to-day life, and so they need the consumers to find a need for that product in order to buy it. The companies artificially create this need. Let's illustrate how this works. Let's take the product of lipstick, because you see a lipstick ad saying there's this false need to have fuller lips in order to be beautiful. And what this means is that women who are looking at that ad see these colours, see these luscious women on display, and see that they need that in order to be beautiful. This is coercive in nature. But secondly, that they always work off psychological manipulation. Because if studies have shown that the colour red promotes hunger in individuals, and then companies like McDonald's saturate their ads of Big Macs and other things with the colour red, this makes it difficult for people to exercise their free will when buying that product, because the choice is subconsciously coercive as well. On a third level, advertising is pernicious and damaging as a result of that. Because if we look at the 1970s, where the average consumer saw 10 ads in a day, compared to now where people are bombarded with over 200 ads every day, we see that people are surrounded by ads in every facet of their saturated environment, where they're constantly bombarded by competing products, and crucially, they cannot opt out of this scenario. What does this mean at the end of this point? That consumers don't have a legitimate choice, and that this choice harms them. Why? Because maybe you do buy that lipstick, and it feels like it is a choice. But it isn't fulfilling. It exploits an insecurity of yours, and it's a waste of your money that leaves you with a fleeting sense of happiness at best in a minute. What this means is that people buy even more products to fill that hole, and the cycle continues. At the end of this point, advertising currently is coercive, manipulates consumers, and is an epidemic that needs to be addressed. Yes.
Ads are normally used to distinguish your products from another company's products that are similar in value. If lookism and those kind of issues are such a problem in your society, why don't we just ban makeup as a whole?
No, because we can still differentiate the products on our side of the house. They can still say, this product is different from this product because of X, Y, and Z. The difference is on our side of the house, you don't get the harmful, pervasive nature of advertising, which is what has made it so damaging in the status quo. Second argument, how we improve consumer choice and decision making. Because note that in our world, producers will be incentivized to make their information accessible and simple. Why is this? So they can get a larger range of consumers and they can be competitive with other companies. This looks like a company advertising a phone to maybe put on the basic camera specifications and the battery life, but not have a full-on logbook of how that product actually works in full. How do we benefit consumers then as a result? Two ways. Firstly, through better products. Because right now, companies compete based on who has the strongest advertising. And they compete to out-manipulate consumers. On our side of the house, you actually have to give consumers a product worth buying. So for example, Apple now actually has to make their iPhone better rather than releasing the same product many times over with false expiration dates. On a secondary level, you get better decision making from consumers. Why is this? Because they don't buy what they don't need, because all the reasons I outlined in my first argument don't exist on our side of the house. But secondly, because they can make a better objective decision. They can weigh up the pros and cons of two products equally, and they can listen to product reviews from other consumers and use those to identify what is a good product. At this point, we get a range and quality of products that are available more to consumers, and the way consumers make these choices is better as a whole. This means consumers are left happier and less poor as a result. We think that's an intrinsic benefit. Third argument then. How we break down harmful and majoritarian narratives propagated through advertising. Because recognize again that the people in charge of advertising are, say, 12 white men in a boardroom at the top of a tower in a city block. These people are not fighting to help social justice movements, rather they're fighting to sell their product to the most people. And how is this harmful? Two reasons. Firstly, because of majoritarian views. Because when you see the majority of billboards having white people advertising their products, or if there is one black person, it's a shallow token sign that ticks the diversity box, that is something that is harmful for people viewing those narratives and seeing that is okay. But secondly, on the sexualization of women. Because what has been proven time and time again is that sex sells, which is why you get Carl's Jr. ads with women in bikinis eating their burger, even though it is unrelated to the product, because that is the sort of thing that sells the product. Why is this harmful? Because it's pervasive, and consumers don't realize that these harmful stereotypes are being perpetrated on them, which hinders the social advancement as they start to believe these things without knowing that they're believing them. On our side of the house, the government acknowledges that this is an issue, and these harmful ads don't exist. So it takes the harmful ideas out of the public sphere. We help to fight those fights. At the end of today's debate, we proved why advertising the status quo is not something we should be supporting, and why we make it much better. Proud to propose.
8 minutes and 12 seconds. I'd like to thank the first speaker of the proposition for their speech, and would like to invite the first speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
A couple of rebuttals that I want to go over regarding the main arguments, the burden, and the model, before I get on into the two main substantives on Ops case. First, on how we principally protect the right of corporations to advertise in any means as long as they're within legal boundaries, and second, on the practical impact this will have on consumer choice. But first, a couple of rebuttals. So their main argument, or one of their first arguments from their side, had to do with how currently advertisements have a coercive nature or an effect on consumers. First of all, we would completely reject the premise that they suddenly create a false need as a result of these types of advertisements. We think that even with the model that they propose, the problems that they've enlisted in the first place still exist on their side. Because we think that at the point in which you create black and white advertisements, so in order to get rid of the coercive nature of the color red, we think that still that doesn't get rid of the problem of individuals' inherent desire in order to obtain a lipstick or a makeup, for example. So at the point in which this was one of the main lines of rhetoric or logic that they use on their side, no thank you, we think they're not able to provide a good enough solvency or mechanism to abate any of the problems that they've already given us. But second of all, we would say that having a better product and having a product with more technology is inherently different, because we would say that individuals in the status quo are able to make a calculus of which types of products that they need and which types of products are best suited in order to help sustain the quality of their lives. That is why we think that at the point in which they're just throwing in technical information to the faces of consumers, they're not actually aiding consumers in making that choice. I'll take you in a moment. What they're doing is they're throwing technical information at consumers without actually allowing them to assess what types of products they need. We think that ultimately products are most beneficial for a consumer once they're able to contextualize how that's going to play out in their lives. Yes.
We told you why producers would be incentivized to make their information accessible and simple. Why is that not the case?
Okay, well, we think that that same thing applies on our side of the house as well. On our side, we still have information that is going to be technical, but it's provided to consumers just as the same on their side. So when they say that they're going to provide information in the most simplistic manner, we think that same accessibility and that same amount of information, the content and accessibility still exists on our side. The crucial difference comes in the fact that on their side, they're unable to allow companies to use this message, or unable to use companies to use their information as a way to proliferate their image, which I'm going to expand on further in my arguments, right? And so the third refutation that we have against their side is that they say that people will blindly follow the information that they see portrayed on advertisements. First of all, we think, like I just clarified, that there's still information regarding the pragmatic aspects of the technology available on our side, so we reject the notion that people are simply going to blindly follow whatever they see. But second of all, we think that the clear difference between our two teams is that we provide consumers with a choice to be able to make that calculus and to decide on which types of products they want and which types of products they think is going to be best suited for their everyday lives. That is why we think that even in the case that a consumer decides to buy, for example, buy a certain basketball because it was a type of basketball that LeBron James used in order to practice for, we think that ultimately if that's the choice that the individual wants to make for him or herself, then that is the choice that is best for that individual. That is the choice that we ultimately uphold on side op in today's debate. Now to get on into the two substantives of today's case. So on op, the first argument that we have is that we principally defend the corporate right in order to use different types of advertisements to get out their market, or to get out their brand image. So firstly, we would give you the characterization of non-technical information, the information that we allow to sustain or manifest on our side of the house. So this type of non-technical information is essentially the brand image of a company. This is a vision that companies have for the consumers who purchase their product. So this would, for example, include, for example, in McDonald's advertisements where they portray congregating in a McDonald's and sharing the food together is a means of being able to proliferate the family type of image. So this is the type of brand image that we think that companies are able to garner on our side of the house as a result of having non-technical information as a part of their advertisements. We reject the notion that this type of information is going to be fake. Because, for example, in the status quo, recently KFC was fined with $1.2 million as a result of proliferating fake image out into the status quo. We think that fake advertisements is already what is banned in the status quo, and this is not the type of information that we strive to support on our side of the house. But also then, second of all, why would corporations have a right to utilize this non-technical information? Why should they have the right? So first, we would say that for companies, it's true that their incentive is to make the most amount of profit. But that is why we think that as long as their means of achieving this profit stays within legal boundaries, then one of the ways in the status quo that companies maximize this amount of profit is through things like the branding image. So the type of image or social values or social messages that they send through non-technical pieces of information proliferated through the advertisements that are shown or showcased to all types of consumers. No, thank you. On an equal level. But second of all, we would say that non-technical information is often the crux of the strategies that companies employ in order to differentiate themselves from other companies. First of all, this is especially true in the case where you have multiple companies that are trying to proliferate the same product or trying to manufacture the same product, because at the point in which a lot of different companies are producing the same product, the key mechanism or the key way that they differentiate themselves from other companies is by things such as spreading out a social value or social message of how each consumer can use that product or utilize that product to increase the quality of their lives. Which is why we think when you have non-technical pieces of information, that helps actualize these types of differences for individuals. Because for example, if you have a car advertisement, just trying to label the difference in the gas mileage is not going to help consumers make the best choice for themselves. It's ultimately knowing whether or not that type of car is best suited to drive smoothly, for example, or is best suited to run as fast as possible, is what helps that consumer make a choice of which type of car they think will be best suited for their everyday needs and for their personalities as well. Third of all, we would say that companies often send a social message through the imaging that is presented through the non-technical information. So they say that so they probably will bring an argument as to how this types of information can still get out into society even without being proliferated through advertisements. However, we would say that the key distinction between the two teams lies in the fact that there is a very big difference between just stating, for example, that Tom and Tom's, if you buy a shoe from them, they donate that revenue to Africa. There would be a difference between showing that on paper and on our side actually portraying that vividly for consumers and allowing consumers to realize that this is what it actually means to buy a shoe from this certain company, that they're still going to be a part of the solvency for a bigger global issue. Second substantive that we have in today's debate is on how it empowers consumer choice. First of all, we would say that consumers in the status quo have very different reasons for buying certain products. Whether it's for technical reasons or because they value the corporate image, each person makes their own calculus in a different way, and we reject the notion that there is a specific right or wrong when it comes to this calculus. So why would this policy ultimately be beneficial for consumers? We think that first of all, corporate image helps consumers to best live the lifestyle that they want to live. For example, if they want to buy a shoe from Nike, sometimes, or most of the time, it's not just about the quality of the sneaker. Ultimately, it comes down to the fact that that consumer wants to capitalize on Nike's branding image of how it means to be an athletic person, how it means to just do it when you buy that type of sneaker. It allows consumers to best express themselves to the company image that can't effectively happen on their side of the house. But also we think that their side decreases the quality of choice for consumers because on their side, small businesses or big corporations are actually able to dominate their social message even for a similar product that is manufactured for smaller businesses. Ultimately, panel, it comes down to this. Because we best help protect the choice of both companies as well as consumers, that is why we are so proud to oppose.
8 minutes and 12 seconds. I would like to thank the first speaker on the opposition for their speech, and would like to invite the second speaker on the proposition to deliver their speech.
Advertising drives itself on a majoritarian narrative that tries to appeal to as many people as possible. Team South Korea in today's debate wanted to say that you can get a subjective benefit when you buy that product that you think that you associate with someone who is great. The key problem with their case is that when you buy that product, you actually feel no different. You might get a fleeting moment of satisfaction when you feel that association with LeBron James, but the point of the matter is that you're no better at basketball than you were before. That you still then want to go out and buy the clothes, buy the cap, buy everything else to valiantly try and strive towards an ideal to which you can never reach or live up to. That is the ideal which we said was false and that we wanted to prevent in today's debate. I want to bring a single argument about how we increase innovation and product differentiation on our side of the house. But firstly, 2 points of clash to address. Firstly, to what extent is advertising coercive and manipulative? And secondly, what is the impact of advertising on consumers in both sides of the house? So on to this first point of clash about whether advertising is coercive and manipulative. Because what we told you at first was that advertising exploits insecurities, works off psychological manipulation, and it is a system which inherently is not able to be opted out of. What were the responses from Team South Korea? They wanted to tell us that no, there was no exploiting of insecurities. It was simply an inherent desire, and has always existed right throughout human history, to buy lipstick. That is patently false. Firstly, we tell you that at the point where there was no lipstick, and even if there was lipstick and it wasn't advertised, quite clearly people never felt a need for that. If you have a look, for example, that if people were raised outside of a certain culture, and in that culture there wasn't advertising that was extremely prevalent, the people outside that culture don't feel a need to buy that same product. That is very, very simple logic. Furthermore, what we then told you is that actually the culture of what people think they want is determined by advertising. That actually it was more pernicious and worked at a higher level than they were prepared to engage with. So secondly, we told you that there was psychological manipulation in terms of using colours and things that people actually do not know are being used against them. We told you that there was not full information that consumers weren't aware. There was never a response to either that idea or the idea that consumers literally cannot opt out of an advertising system which constantly barrages them with these types of images and tells them that there is an ideal of what they must look like and what they must strive to be and have. There was never a response to that. So what did they tell us? They told us that companies have rights and we need to do that insofar as the legal framework. Firstly, quite obviously, Team Korea, we're trying to change the existing legal framework that exists in today's debate, so that's not an issue either. But secondly, we tell you that people in the government limit property rights all the time. For example, there are already standards for things such as false advertising, which we tell you already exists under their world when we do have this type of psychological manipulation that people aren't aware of. But furthermore, a simple analogy is to something like pollution. When a company is polluting, the government regulates against that because that is actively harmful to consumers of that society. We tell you that when advertising is so pernicious, we are able to limit that right of companies to do whatever they want and to do whatever they want to their consumers. Firstly, yes.
Even in a worst case scenario where consumers choose to buy products based on the ideal, as long as this gives them the satisfaction that they need to sustain their lives, why is this ultimately a bad thing on your side?
Because the satisfaction that they gain is only momentary, right? That is the reason that people in a consumer society buy more and are never ever satisfied. That is the exact problem that we are fixing in today's debate. That people never can feel that sense of satisfaction, no matter how much that product tells you that you can be satisfied if you own it. So secondly then, how does this benefit consumers in today's debate? Because it's very important to notice the characterization of what advertising actually looks like in today's debate. It is that which characterizes and tries to portray itself to the most people as possible. What did Team Korea, South Korea say on this point? They said that they can differentiate through their social messages. Firstly, we tell you that not all businesses are socially conscious. Like, while there might be a few vegan shoe brands out there, we tell you that the majority of them actually hide the fact that they have Nike sweatshops and hide the fact that they do have these vast human rights abuses under the veneer of being this champion of equality, of being this champion of all things good about Western society. Furthermore, I'll tell you in my split why we actually get more differentiation on products on the outside of the house. Secondly, they told us, and this was probably their most ridiculous claim, that people don't blindly follow advertising. Now, sure, they might look at the types of technical details, might look at the types of battery life that a phone has, but overwhelmingly, the reason that people buy Apple and buy Samsung is not because they are objectively better products, it is because they have been conditioned by society that tells them that that is what they need in order to be happy. The comparative that needs to be made in this debate is that they are still able, on our side of the house, to have the types of things that allow them to make an informed decision. So those are the types of things that actually mean that they can make the best decision and align themselves with the best products and best values. We simply take away the types of pernicious advertising that exists under their side of the house. Secondly, they told us that there was a subjective benefit that exists through association. As I flagged in my introduction, there was A, no choice in actually having that benefit or having that subjective benefit pushed upon you, but secondly, we tell you it is intrinsically fleeting. That once you realise that your situation and your happiness doesn't change at all after you buy that product, A, you're unhappy, and B, you are then incentivised to try and valiantly strive and buy more and more products to constantly try and achieve that ideal. Secondly now, let's have a look at what Will brought you and what went vastly unresponded to by Team South Korea. He told you that advertising caters to majoritarian narratives, that there is a sexualization of women that is absolutely disgusting, that pushes them into categories of what their body must look like, what they look like. There was never a response from Team South Korea as to why this type of advertising was not something that was intensely harmful both to women, both to minorities, and all the people who are actually being subjugated by current society. We tell you that we were the side that actually stood up for these people and allowed them to actually have a voice within society. Now let's move on to my point about how we increase innovation and product differentiation. Because recognise at the moment, consumer decisions are dictated by brand loyalty and association. Sectors in technology and clothing are dominated by a small number of huge firms that solidify their market power through advertising. This leads to stagnation and a lack of innovation. Let's be real. There is very little objective difference between an iPhone 5 and an iPhone X, but Apple is able to convince you of that through their marketing power and through the associations that they get. We allow for greater innovation in three key ways. Firstly, on a basic level, we remove superfluous advertising and brand loyalty and create individuals who are open to change without manipulation. Secondly, we allow for small firms that can develop when advertising power is no longer used to solidify market share. This means that genuinely better products are actually rewarded, unlike under the status quo, where they're simply solidified through existing narratives of advertising. But finally, we create more incentives on big companies to innovate. Because in a simple level, billions that are now spent on marketing and telling consumers what they need to buy can now be spent on innovation. But why are companies actually incentivized to make that switch? Because now they must compete on quality. They must differentiate their products, because right now, differentiation between products comes through the way in which they advertise. For example, there is very little objective difference between like any other coffee brand, but Nescafe differentiates itself by having George Clooney be the face of that brand. Under our side of the house, you have to differentiate by actually having different products and winning market share through that method. The outcome of this is that we disrupt stagnant industries and increase the breadth of products available to consumers. At the end of today's debate, we were the only side that stood with consumer choice. We were the only side that prevented these harmful and pernicious narratives from being perpetrated right throughout society. We are very, very proud to propose.
8 minutes and 13 seconds. I would like to thank the second speaker of the proposition for their speech, and would like to invite the second speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
When you use a product, you're using more than the technical details of that product. You're using the design of the product, you're using the image of the product, you're using the lifestyle that comes with the product. We think that that's how all products in society works, and we're very happy to celebrate that. Two questions in this debate. Firstly, who better guarantees choice? Secondly, which side makes products better and more diversified? And then I'm going to go on to the third argument and tell you how advertisements empower minority identities. Firstly, who better guarantees choice? The government's analysis was that people buy things that they don't need because advertisements are inherently coercive. Firstly, we would say that they haven't explained, it's quite patronizing for them to assume that people don't know what makes them happy. They never explain why this is only momentary, why this is only happiness that comes momentarily. We would say that if you're willing to buy into a particular lifestyle, if you're willing to buy into a particular image, that's a lifestyle that you can choose to have, and we think that if that makes the individual happy, we think that's a good thing. But secondly, notice that they can't talk about choice because they are the side in which government dictates the standards for which people buy products. They are essentially saying that the only information people should have is the technical product details and not any other interpretation of that technical product detail, not any other image or lifestyle that is proliferated as a result of that product. We would say that they are the side that is more coercive in the sense that they already decide for people what metric you should buy a product on. Thirdly, we would say that buying an image and a lifestyle is a legitimate choice and a self-actualizing choice that individuals can make. Because we would say that in the status quo, it's not all the same product, and it's not all the same kind of marketing. Apple oftentimes markets in a way that makes the people who buy Apple products very classy and hip, whereas Microsoft and Windows often are more willing to target businessmen and businesswomen and these kinds of individuals. We would say that technical product details or the image of the product isn't enough to encapsulate the image that is proliferated in the lifestyle that you buy as a result of buying that product. We would furthermore say that buying a product is more than the details, because oftentimes it means not only that you can self-actualize, but also that you can self-express. Because I'm buying this particular product, I want to make myself look more hip. I want to make myself, a particular image, whatever that image may be. And that is a lifestyle choice that individuals can make. We are very happy that individuals can make this choice. But finally, and ultimately, everything impacts your choice in the sense that anything you see in society is influential to you to some extent. If that is the case, we provide the better comparative. It's about whether you allow people to have the maximum amount of choice by allowing corporations and different kinds of entities to provide different kinds of images, or whether you're only willing to provide a limited degree of information. We would say that even under our world, if people want to buy products based on the technical product details, we are very much willing to provide that information. They can do that if they want. But their world is a world in which the individuals want to buy products for their self-identity and their self-actualization and their self-image and their branding. These are the individuals that are actively harmed under their side of the house. Second question in this debate. Which side makes products better? They basically told you that companies will make better products because they will make better, they will focus more on the technical product details. We would say that the quality of a product is more than the technical product detail. It's oftentimes the artistic value it has, it's oftentimes the design value it has, it's oftentimes how you market, and these are artistic things that we want to value in the status quo. We would say that all of these things are things that companies are less willing to focus on under their side of the house. Therefore, yes, you may have a higher resolution camera, yes, you may have a better quality music or better quality sound under their side of the house, but you're not going to get many of the other standards that make a product as much as valuable. We think you're losing out on that. In the status quo, on the comparative, companies who wish to focus on the technical details in the advertisement can. Companies who wish to focus on their design and their lifestyle can. That's the diversity that we promote on our side. Yes.
Under the status quo, people are actively discouraged from buying smaller, objectively better products because they don't meet the psychological manipulation that advertising tells them they must buy. Why do you ever get that comparative under your side of the house?
Look, they entrench that monopoly on their side of the house as well, because their logic is people are more familiar with these goods, people know their names better, and therefore they're still going to spend money on their goods. At the point at which their model says that you're also going to have the brand name there, we don't think you've ever explained how you change that. Secondly, on the idea of diversity, they apparently live in a world in which the only cosmetic available is red lipstick, and the only fashion available is the one that, I don't know, the most prettiest or the most fashionable actresses wear. But we don't live in that world. We would say that yes, there are regrettable instances in which fashion is unilateralized and cosmetics is unilateralized, but the world is changing. The world is changing so that there are different colors of lipstick, like black, blue, and different shades of red and orange and everything. But the problem is that technical details and these things written in black letters isn't enough to show each customer what it means to try that on. We would say that in our world, the celebrities who fit that image or who fit that color the best are able to utilize this, corporations are able to pay them to wear these, and these are the ways in which you can market, and therefore the customer is better able to understand empower minority identities. 3 levels of analysis. Firstly, why do corporations have an incentive to develop minority identities in advertisements? We would say that these are the minority identities are basically niche markets that are on the rise. We see feminism on the rise, LGBTQ movements on the rise, eco-friendly lifestyles and vegan lifestyles on the rise. Corporations also develop products that allow individuals to best represent their identity, whether it be for financial reasons or whether it be because the corporation actually represents that identity. We would point to you the example of feminist lifestyles, how they're represented by corporations like Feminist Apparel. We would also point to you eco-friendly lifestyles that are represented by corporations like Tesla. Second level of analysis, why is this hindered under government side? We would say that the sales and development of these particular products are particularly contingent on the emphasis that you are buying more than a technical product detail. The idea that technical product details aren't enough to embody the very values that are important to you. We would say that on our side of the house, these values are emphasized in advertisements that portray a particular lifestyle. We would also say that a particular celebrity that already supports that value can show other individuals that this is a form of empowerment. Third level of analysis, why is the empowerment of minority identity in capitalism important? Firstly, we would say that every individual should be able to self-express and self-actualize through a product that's already a given. But secondly, this is particularly important for minorities because they don't have much of a platform to embody the things that they support in their daily lives. We would say that consumption is a format and consumption and wearing these goods and utilizing these goods is a way in which you can tell other individuals in your daily life that I represent this value. Thirdly, we would say that minorities are capable of solidifying collectivity under our side of the house. All of these are ultimately impossible under their side of the house. We reject the notion and we rebut the notion that all advertisements will only have majoritarian view. We're more than proud to oppose.
8 minutes and 9 seconds. I would like to thank the second speaker of the opposition for their speech and would like to invite the third speaker of the proposition to deliver their speech.
Could I please remind board teams to whisper while the speaker is speaking?
The problem with Team Opposition's case is the social benefits about feeling contentment from buying a product. The fabrication of having a self-identity that is, cemented by a great lipstick you buy is completely made up and fabricated by the advertisement industry in the first place, right? All of the benefits they wanted to assert that individuals feel when they buy these products don't come from an inherent desire to be consumers. They come from a pressure that is put on them by people who want to make money. That is something that they never fail to recognise in this debate. 3 questions to answer. What is the effect of advertisement on consumer choices? Secondly, how are social issues in society affected by advertisement? And thirdly, who betters the quality of products that we see in society? So on to what is the effect of advertisement on consumer choice. We gave you a very clear characterization of how manipulative advertisement can be, and we gave you structural reasons for that. We told you about the 12 men sitting in the office who want to make a profit. They use things like psychological manipulation. They make sure that advertisement is inundated around the population, and they create a false need to make consumers feel like they need products. They had a few responses to this. Firstly, they wanted to say that it is going to be hard for people to assess our sorts of advertisement. And they said that it's really important for people, when buying products, they need to see the full picture. They need to see the lifestyle that is attached to products. Firstly, acknowledge that that lifestyle, that image that is encapsulated in most advertisement, isn't something that we see as valuable in the first place. They wanted to assert that knowing as much as you can about an image or the idea around an ad is good, but it is actually apparent to be actually quite damaging, right? You see in the example of Axe body spray, it's a deodorant can, and the ad is a man, and when in that ad, several women start flocking to him as he sprays this deodorant on his body. We need them to actually come up and explain for the first time why it's necessary for all teenage boys to see value in that narrative that is being portrayed. We think that is highly unrealistic. We think it's highly damaging, and we don't think that's something that actually equates to seeing how good quality that product is going to be. If we think there is an example in which the image surrounding a product is going to be beneficial for someone's lifestyle, we think that person still sees and feels that benefit in their lifestyle once they buy that product. We just want to make sure that when they buy that product, they're making a good objective decision. Then they wanted to say that people don't blindly follow advertisement, and people actually do weigh up the costs and benefits, and they look at objective descriptions, and they look at advertisement equally. The fact is, there is a trade-off, because in making that calculus as to whether to buy something or not, advertisement inhibits one's ability to look at something objectively in the first place. If you have the technical requirements or features of the iPhone, you aren't actually reading that if everything that is being bombarded onto you is that you have to have the newest iPhone to be cool, you have to have the newest iPhone to fit in. And so we think there is a trade-off, and we think you need to look at something objectively. Then they wanted to say that even if these are subjective benefits, they're still legitimate. The fact is, if someone feels happy after buying a pair of shoes, the reason why people have more than one pair of shoes is because you don't feel an actual feel of satisfaction, you don't actually feel satisfied when you buy a product like that. If people were only buying things that they needed, everyone would just have one outfit and one pair of shoes. But the fact is, the consumers, the producers and the advertisers around us make us feel like we have to have more. That is why everyone has hundreds of pairs of clothing, hundreds of pairs of shoes, because no one ever feels satisfied with what they're buying. Even if you feel happy when you put those shoes on for the first week, you actually never feel happy. So what do we go and ask at the house? We completely revolutionise the way in which people actually make decisions. We make it normal to actually have to go and do research and not just buy what's most popular, what's being endorsed by your favourite celebrity, what are your friends are buying because it has the Nike tick. We make it normal to go out and do research, and we make it normal for objective comparisons to be made when purchasing products. Secondly, onto how are social messages affected. But firstly, yes.
I bought a LeBron James shoes 3 years ago, but I still love it right now. Who are you to generalize why I should or should not love this product based on me buying it, and now that standard should be apparent to every single person within society?
Well, I'm really glad you like your shoes, but I actually think it's quite sad that the reason you bought them was because of LeBron James. I think it would have been really beneficial if you had 3 pairs of shoes in front of you with all specific requirements in front of you, and you could have chosen the one that you would see would best fit your life and would best sustain you through the next 3 years. Maybe it's lucky that your shoes turned out to be perfect, but for most people that is not the case. So now onto how are social messages affected in both worlds. Because we told you that profit incentives mean that companies project harmful narratives onto people because they want to make money and they don't have social consciousness. Firstly, they told you that brands are actually really great, and the way they differentiate themselves is through spreading social ideals. Nick dealt with this very well in his rebuttal and talking about the example of the shoe company Tom's, and they dropped this point, and so we think we've won this. Secondly, they wanted to talk about niche markets towards the end of the second speaker's speech. The fact is, those niche markets never actually have a platform today, because you can never build a huge feminist shoe brand or a huge vegan soap brand when Dove and huge other big companies dominate the entire market because of their huge market share that they get from their unlimited budgeting for advertisement, right? If you actually want to get good vegan or feminist products put onto the sphere for the public, then they'll be listed and people will see that those are the traits they have. You never get the sort of benefits they wanted to talk about when those companies are being shadowed by the biggest ones. What did we tell you about social issues? Because this was extremely well explained and important material that we never heard a response to all down the line. We told you a huge problem with advertisement is the way in which majoritarian values are portrayed onto society. Take Victoria's Secret, for example, in which 80% of the models are severely underweight, and only one of them, perhaps, is from a different ethnicity apart from Caucasian. This means that every single young girl, every single person in society that is looking at that brand feels that they don't fit in if they don't meet that sort of criteria, right? We think that is absolutely terrible that they want to stand by having those narratives there because it makes people make better decisions about what underwear they're buying. That's just false, and it perpetuates harmful narratives. Then on to sexualization, because they were also happy to stand by the sexualization of women in advertisement as well, seeing as we heard nothing from any of their speakers. That means they're happy for arbitrary like beer ads or food companies to show naked women on their advertisement in order to sell their products because sex apparently sells. We think this is unjust and this is immoral and this needs to stop. We've won this debate because they're really happy for that to just happen. On to the third point about who gets the best quality of products. They wanted to tell you that there's different metrics in which products can have value. They wanted to say that artistic value is also important. Basically, we think that companies can't choose to compete on artistic value or like having good advertisement or having good quality, because at the moment, unless you have a huge advertising budget, unless you can advertise above everyone else, you actually can't compete. So it is a trade-off right at the moment. You actually do have to care about advertisement or quality. What we do is we even the playing field, and so if people want to compete on artistic quality, they can. If people want to compete on product quality, they can. But at the moment, companies can only compete on advertisement competition because that is the thing that consumers see most. That is the thing that is easiest for consumers to buy into. We told you that we get better quality when people are making objective decisions. We gave you Nick's entire split point about how we get more innovation and better startup companies, and they also had no response to that. At the end of this debate, we were the only ones that were realistic about advertisement. We were realistic about how people make choices, and we were realistic about actually solving some of the biggest problems that society has.
I would like to thank the third speaker of the proposition for their speech, and would like to invite the third speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
Team government tries to portray corporations as evil entities that will do whatever they can to manipulate the population in order to earn money. Firstly, we're going to say that's a very radical characterization, but even assuming their best case scenario, we're going to tell you why their solution is a problem-solution mismatch on the three clashes I have in this debate. Firstly, what is the purpose of advertisement that exists within society? It's important to know because they target things like lookism issues, where for instance there's like very radical contextualization like a deodorant advertisement. There's going to be naked ladies everywhere that forces people to have a certain aspect in society. We would firstly say that's a very radical characterization. That's not really what happens in the status quo, but even if that's the case, that's a societal issue that won't be solved with advertisement being gone from the first place. Let me give you a comparative. For instance, the idea that Chanel and all these kind of makeup corporations stop deciding to put makeup advertisements and only put technical impacts onto their makeup, that doesn't mean I'm going to have like a different attraction to the female in the first place. That kind of lookism situation will exist in both sides of the house in the first place. Just the fact that you take away these kind of the fact that you take away this kind of advertisement isn't going to change the societal structure on how I view a certain person and how I want a certain person to look like in the status quo. That's kind of like saying if McDonald's, thank you sir, that's like saying if McDonald's stops putting advertisement on their chicken burgers, then automatically I'm going to stop liking chicken burgers in the first place. I don't think that's really what's going to happen in the status quo. But to continue on, we think that they're very negligent on the principal case that we had about corporate right. Because we told you that corporate right is valence and it should be given, no thank you sir. Corporate rights should only be given under a condition in which they process the legal boundaries and they don't do fake advertisements in a sense. The kind of things that they point towards, like fake advertisement, we are more than willing to ban under our side of the house. But the very moment in which corporations are trying to distinguish themselves, Chanel is trying to distinguish themselves from other kind of makeup companies, or for instance, McDonald's trying to distinguish themselves from other fast food chains. That's the true purpose of advertisement, in which the corporate, the corporate vision is the kind of idea in which this is the kind of society or corporation that we defend. McDonald's is family friendly. That's why they have instances of advertisements of families eating together. We need a direct comparison on how these kind of societal issues would change if these kind of advertisements would be gone in the first place. Which is why I asked in the POI from the very Prime Minister. No, thank you. Like, I asked you why it is that in this kind of society, there will be a change in the societal values, but there was a lack of response from this. We think that they need a direct comparison on why things like lookism or Ben chugging beers after the end of a game will change if advertisements disappear. Second clash. Which side empowers consumerism in choice values? Because we told you from the very first speaker of our site that, okay, so firstly, government side said that people are manipulated and that they like a certain product for only a certain amount of time. We would say that that's a very false contextualization and a generalization to all people in the first place. Because I don't wear LeBron James shoes to play in the NBA in the future. I wear LeBron James shoes so I can look cool in front of my basketball friends, and because I can look like, oh dude, look, you have a LeBron James shoes, right? Like, that kind of thing shows that they can't just contextualize and generalize that I will always be dissatisfied after wearing LeBron shoes in the first place. I don't know what kind of crazy society we would live in where a certain person who buys LeBron James is going to go to Golden State Warriors and say, why are you not accepting me into the team? Like, that's not the kind of impact that we have from buying these shoes in the first place. But what is it about true consumerism value that we propose from side opposition? Because we told you that there are a variety of different consumers that exist within the status quo. There are very techno-savvy people who care about the resolutions, who care about the pixels. There are people who care about following trends like me, which is why I buy LeBron James shoes. But there's also people who care about the logo impacts and what this logo means to the diversity among people in the status quo. This kind of different consumerism is exactly the reason why we can't take away brand image and we can't take away brand logo from the first place. Examples. Nestle, for instance, is the kind of corporation that actively fights against child labor. By me buying that product, I am telling people around me that I am part of a solution to combat child labor, and I am going to try to prove myself by buying these products in the first place. Uniqlo is very cool and casual, and that's the kind of things that this product can embolden. And Chanel is very classy and wealthy. What's important to note is not just the facts will get this kind of mindset towards you in the first place. Not just a simple vision of a Uniqlo shirt will get you that, but the fact that it is a Uniqlo logo, the fact that Uniqlo advertises themselves to be this kind of corporation is exactly why it empowers the consumerism, because the principle that we defended on our side of the house was lifestyle. Because it's so hard for someone to be another kind, I'll take you in a moment, it's so hard for someone to be saying oh, I'm going to try to be this person without actually buying the products that represent that kind of person in the first place. That's exactly why we think consumerism is empowered under our side of the house. Yes?
Do you think it's okay that McDonald's is allowed to advertise themselves as a family-focused business when they are a leading cause behind childhood obesity?
Okay, if they are a leading cause in childhood obesity, I would say that they have to change their logo and they have to change their version of how they're perceived in the first place. I don't think that's going to be a very necessary issue. That just because McDonald's is family friendly and just because it has the leading care of child obesity, that automatically we should just boycott child. And that doesn't mean that it's not going to. That does not mean that that's going to completely disappear on their side of the house. Because people who still buy chicken nuggets or people who still buy Big Macs will also get obesity in the first place. I don't understand why advertisement is going to be a changing value that exists within that kind of society. Third clash, no thank you. Which side can best protect the quantity and quality of the products that exist within the status quo? Because government side tries to make a hypothetical scenario in which small corporations can sustain themselves and they can't survive because people are incentivized to buy bigger corporations in the first place. Sure, I'll agree that that often than not, people will try to be buying Macs or Microsoft in the first place. But I'm going to factually deny that in the status quo, that smaller corporations are unable to succeed in the first place. If you go to, for instance, Korea's computer stores, there's thousands of different logos. For instance, Asus, Dell, HP, these kind of logos all exist in the status quo, where smaller corporations are allowed to say that this is the kind of product and this is the kind of image that you have when you buy our products in the first place. But on the their side of the house, it becomes worse. Because if you're only going to compare based on the technicalities, of course we're going to expect companies like MacBook Pro and Apple and Microsoft to dominate the technologicals and dominate the systems, like higher pixels, bigger smartphone screens and whatnot. Meaning that if you want quality, then that means in their side of the house, all these smaller corporations are indefinitely going to die. That's exactly the reason why we promote things like brand image. We promote things like ability for small corporations to express their personal visions and express what it feels like to become our corporation in the status quo. But secondly, we also talked about, from our second speaker, the impact of diversity. Because the very moment you push onto certain narratives, you eliminate certain barriers that are previously considered important. For instance, like design. For instance, importance like color or whatnot. These kind of things are ultimately going to be gone because corporation or people are now coerced to buy only a certain type of product because society says this is the best kind of system, this is the best kind of software, even though people may have different preferences in the status quo. That is why we celebrate this kind of motion. Thank you.
13 seconds. I would like to thank the third speaker of the opposition for their speech and would like to invite the reply speaker of the opposition to deliver this.
This is what we're standing behind. We don't want to live in a world where technical product details are the only standards by which people decide whether you buy that product or not. In which everyone says that, oh, this is a technically better product, and therefore that's the world you don't want to avoid, you don't want to live in. Two reasons why. Firstly, we're going to tell you why we better guarantee choice. Secondly, we're going to explain the impact of advertisements. So firstly, on the idea of choice. We already responded to their idea of how advertisements are so coercive. Firstly, we told you that you have to be comparative in this debate, because essentially, their world is a world in which they dictate what good consumption is. Because according to government wit, good consumption means making good comparisons and doing your research and buying your product. But we don't think that every single person in the world should decide that that is the way in which you can consume well. We already told you that different people make different choices in lives, and if people want to do what they do with their money in order to make certain choices, in order to go through certain processes, we already told you why we're more than happy to support that. But secondly, we told you that there are different kinds of consumers in the world. Some people may prefer technical product details and buy based on that. Others buy goods for more than their utility. Others buy goods to look a certain way, to embody a certain value, and express a certain lifestyle. We told you that we are the side that protects both stakeholders. Because if you want to use technical product details, then go ahead. But if you want to embody a certain lifestyle, if you want to express a certain image and go a certain way about it, we protect you too. Thirdly, we already told you that ultimately, everything is impacting and influential and everything impacts your choice. If that is the case, the best way to go about it is to provide the maximum level of choice possible. We told you that we can provide interpretations of what it means to have this particular technical product detail. We can have visual images of what it means to wear this particular clothes or wear this particular cosmetics. All of these were unresponsive to. We already told you that each person can live up to their own standard better on our side. We think that they are the side that dictates how people should buy products. Second clash, what is the impact of advertisements? Firstly, it's important to note that they cherry-pick examples. We live in a diverse society where different kinds of advertisements exist. We already gave you several examples of that. But even if they prove to the fullest extent why their cherry-picked examples are so bad in the status quo, this may be an argument for regulations on advertisements, which we already told you we support from our leader of opposition. It's not an argument for a blanket ban on every single advertisement that is out there. We already told you why certain advertisements are oftentimes beneficial and provide information to consumers that they can't get with a black font letter describing what the product is. Secondly, they give you the idea of how big companies monopolize in the status quo. We already responded to this. We told you that this is also going to happen in your world, in which if you're a assumption is that people buy products based on the logo and the brand, then presumably in a world where the brand is also on the name of the good, then people will also buy their products. They haven't been comparative here. Thirdly, we told you about how we promote diverse products and better products. And here we told you that a product can be good quality for various reasons. It may be the technical detail that makes it a good quality product, but it may be other things, what kinds of value it embodies, what kinds of artistic value it has, what kind of design it has. And all of these things are things that simply cannot be encapsulated by having a letter or a couple of letters or words on the product detail. We are on the side that enables each individual and each corporation to compete on their own terms and strengthen their strengths. We don't think this is something that happens under their side. Ultimately, we're very proud to oppose.
I would like to thank the reply speaker for the opposition for their speech, and would like to invite the reply speaker on the proposition to commence the speech.
If the fulfillment and benefit from consuming products was as great as Team South Korea claimed, why is it that people in society are deeply, deeply unhappy? Why is it that they constantly buy more and more products to try and fill this unattainable void? We were the side that actually acknowledged the problem and actually proposed a solution through which we could fill this void and actually have a sensible stance towards advertising and how it permeates in society. There are 3 points of clash at the end of today's debate. Firstly, to what extent is advertising coercive and damaging? Secondly, how do we benefit in consumers? And finally, the impact on minority groups. So firstly then, on whether advertising is coercive and damaging. Because we had a principally consistent stance right down our line. We told you that advertising sells a false ideal, that there is psychological manipulation that can't be regulated for, and that you can't opt out of that system. Note that there was never a response to that final line of analysis, or the point that there is psychological manipulation that will always exist within advertising. So what were the different principled stances that Team South Korea took throughout this debate? Because there were many. At first, they wanted to tell us that companies had rights, that this was quickly dropped when they realised that we'd responded to that with an analogy of pollution and being damaging through society, and then tried to be picked up at third again with the same analysis right again. So then there was a case shift and they told us that the government is instead telling us what to buy, and that's principally unjust. Firstly, we told you that it's regulated and it's consistent across the board for all advertisers, and that if it does go too far, there is a standards and advertisers can complain if it actually is going beyond the standards which we set at first. So then what did they tell us? They then told us that you shouldn't tell people what they need. The problem with this is that we were the only side that identified the information failure that existed under our side of the house. The fact that people aren't making that rational decision. At the point where their principled case rested on the exact assertion, and I quote, that just because we can't stop sexism, we shouldn't stop the way that it manifests itself in society, that was a principally inconsistent stance that we had dealt with right down our line. So secondly then, who is able to best benefit consumers in this debate? Because we told you we benefited product quality and we promoted real choice. It was telling that they could never actually answer the POI we asked their third speaker. Because the fact of the matter is that advertisers do blatantly lie about their image and they do associate themselves with false ideals that can never be attained. What did they want to tell us? Their primary benefit was that people can associate themselves with a lifestyle when they buy a product. How we had a number of responses right down our line. Firstly, we told you that that very lifestyle is unattainable in the first place. Often it premises itself off a majoritarian approach or like an ideal of what the feminine body should be and the types of body standards and beauty standards which permeate themselves through advertising. Secondly, we told you, even insofar as people associate with that lifestyle is often actively harmful. Often it is associating yourself with the type of deodorant ad that tells you, if you spray yourself with deodorant, women will flock to you, women will love you. That is the type of lifestyle that people associate with that we wanted to prevent under our side of the house. But finally, and crucially, the fact that people subscribe to these lifestyles doesn't actually make them happy. Because the whole point is that the types of happiness they get is fleeting. The reason that people have multiple pairs of Nike shoes is because they weren't satisfied and can never be satisfied by simply owning one. So the types of lifestyles that they wanted to associate with were harmful and actually can never be attained under their side of the house. Finally, they told us that they can still get brand loyalty through logos and try to mitigate all of our benefits in that way. The comparative was that we allow people to make informed decisions on technical details and actually compare these products. Furthermore, there was never an adequate response to my split material about why big firms and small firms now can actually have this market share without the types of dominant market share that is needed. They wanted to tell us that brand is needed to grow your products. We told you that if they can compete on quality, that was what we stood for on today's debate. Finally, on the issue of minorities, we told you it was disgusting that they never had a response to the fact that you have a majoritarian advertising society in which there is an overt sexualization of women that permeates through that medium. At the end of this debate, we were the side that supported rational consumer choice, we supported a free and fair advertising market, we supported the quality of products, we won today's debate.